Since we are live, hello everybody, my name is Mike Laser. I'm your announcer today and a writer for the Nighttime Show, here with Matt Walker, the head writer, producer for the Nighttime Show. Our guest today, you know him from Jar Jar Binks, Stomp on Broadway, and the soon-to-drop Afrofuturist podcast, Ahmed. Best, everybody! Yeah! Wham, wham! No. Throwing it to our host. You know him as Jabba the Hutt stunt double. Give it up for Stephen Kramer Glickman.
Hurtful! My feelings are hurt.
That was mean.
Hey,
Yes.
This is an exciting thing for us. We are live from the Scum and Villainy Cantina in Hollywood, California. A very, very cool place. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. Go online, and you're here. You can see us. We're here right now. I'm very excited to be here.
You can see us on Periscope right now.
Yep. Right now. Oh. This is a very exciting
Although
thing.
if you're listening to this when this comes out next Wednesday, then it's not right now. It's last week, but go on Periscope and you can see it.
But if you're on the internet right now, then you're watching it right now.
Yes.
Right now, it happens now.
Yeah, it's real right now.
Ahmed,
Right
it's
about
happening.
now.
It's in the moment. We're in the moment.
This is happening in the
Yes.
moment,
All right.
Ahmed. How do you? I'm going to move this out of the way.
Bib Fortuna is in the way?
Bib Fortuna's in the way. He's
Yeah.
always in the way, though.
Yeah, he gets in the way.
Isn't he?
A little
Yeah.
creepy.
He is no Jedi.
It's very cool of us. Very cool of you to join us.
Of course, man.
Very exciting. This
And
is.
should we talk about what today is?
Yeah, today
Oh,
is
yeah.
the 40th anniversary of Star Wars: A New Hope.
It is.
Being released, yes.
This film, Star Wars, has had an enormous effect on the world and
Yes, it has.
on me as a human being. My entire life is kind of based and wrapped around this film, and I try. It has given me a new hope. Throughout my life, many times, to try new things and to go to places I would never go. Like, for example, I just recently went to New York City and had a pretty horrible time.
Really?
Yeah.
But
not that long ago,
Not that
in a
long-
place
called me.
sort of far away.
I should have. Do you live out? Do you ever
grew
go out
up
to New
there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
See, I lived in New York for a long time. I went back recently.
You wound up in the hospital.
I ended up in the hospital.
What did you do?
I pushed too hard, Ahmed.
Yeah?
I
You too?
love too much. I tried
I heard
too
that about
hard.
you. That's what I hear about you.
You pushed too hard, so you got hemorrhoids? Is that what
Yes,
you're saying?
that's exactly what happened.
okay.
That was a different episode.
Yeah, that was a different time, yeah.
Different New York.
You know, I stayed out too late, too many nights. I was having too much fun the
Yeah,
first
man.
couple days, and then I just burned myself to a crisp. I just
Gotta
burned
be
myself
careful.
out.
Man.
It was hard. Where did you live? Where did you grow up in?
I
New
grew
York?
up in the Bronx,
Yeah.
in a section of the Bronx called Soundview, which is very close to where Jennifer Lopez is from, Castle Hill in the
wow.
Bronx. There's a lot going on in the Bronx at that time, 70s, 80s. Hip hop was pretty much born on my block.
Really?
So yeah. I would, I lived in a 17-story building in Soundview, and in the summertime, like every weekend, DJs, and this was like when DJs were brand new. DJs would come to the park across the street from my building and spin all night long, and it would be like Grandmaster Flash and Cool Herc.
Holy.
Red
And is
Alert.
this like extension cords coming out of windows down the street?
It was. They used to hack into the street lamps
Okay.
for electricity, and
Really?
this was before the crossfader. Because Grandmaster Flash invented the crossfader, so they would hook up two home stereo receivers and on two different turntables, and they would
Just turn the
mix
volume?
using like volume knobs and the
Oh,
balances. So that was like the first mixing between two tables, and then Grandmaster Flash, who is an electrician, invented the crossfader and put that in on a receiver, and that's when the DJ mixer kind of was invented.
Yeah.
But as I was a kid, this was all happening on my block, like b-boy and breakdancing, rapping, DJing. It was all kind of being invented in
Were
the
you
Bronx at
doing
the
some of
time.
that yourself?
I was,
breakdancing.
I was doing a lot of breakdancing. Breakdancing was cheap. We didn't have very much growing up.
Were you
so
doing the electric boogaloo?
I was doing the electric boogaloo. I was a better electric boogaloo dancer than I was a break dancer.
Yeah.
But Zulu Nation, Rocksteady Crew, all of that was happening in my neighborhood. So we'd see a lot of it.
My
And
gosh.
I was a little kid. I was like growing up 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
And I would see all of these B-boys, and everybody would like have the Africa Bambaataa Zulu Nation
Yeah.
T-shirts and stuff. And then Rocksteady Crew was like the biggest thing in New York at the time. And then Beat Street, the movie, came out, and that's kind of when it,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
movie happened in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I remember Beat Street and Breakin' and
Really?
Breakin' 2
Yeah, yeah.
were like the ones that
Yeah.
I remember. Like I was in junior high or something when those movies came out, and it was like that's when that became a culture that
Yeah, it was a thing.
I paid attention to.
Yeah, and Beat Street, that took place pretty much all in the Bronx, and everybody was in it. Grandmaster Flash was
Yeah.
in it. The Furious Five was in it. Melly Mel was in it. Dougie Fresh, when just came out, was in it. It was a big deal. Even before like Crush Groove. Crush Groove was the other big New York hip hop movie for that time, which was pretty much about Run DMC.
Yeah.
And Russell Simmons.
Were you able to hop on set for any of these things, or was it just like, I can't believe my neighborhood is blowing up?
I wasn't. I mean, those movies were really kind of shot in a very guerrilla movie kind of fashion. And nobody really knew outside of New York City what breakdancing was. It hadn't become this thing yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rap and breaking wasn't that huge as we thought in the rest of the country and in the world. Like everybody thought it was going to be over really quickly, because
That was just a fad.
they thought it was a fad. They
Yeah.
thought, they thought it was coming on the back end of disco, which all the hip hop records back in the day were over disco
Yeah.
records, because there
Sure.
would be this part in disco records where it would just be the instrumental, and they called that the break.
Sure.
Right? So everybody would rap over the break. And so DJs just started spinning the breaks so people could rap live, in parks, like on my neighborhood. And then people would dance during the break, hence break dancing. And then, the beats that were created from the disco records were usually from the break. And that's why they're called break beats. And
Yeah.
that's where all of that comes from.
That's awesome.
I'm going to go on record. Controversial, but
Sure.
disco is not as good.
As
No,
hip hop?
Yeah.
As hip hop, no. I
gonna
think
go on
you're
record with
100% right about that. I think that is a fact,
Yeah.
and I think the world has the world agrees with you.
Okay. I just don't want your Twitter to blow up with angry.
No. You know what? I have a lot of disco fans on my Twitter, and they're going to be very upset. They're probably watching right now.
A lot of people
Robbie,
with afros
Robbie,
are
let
very
me know
angry right now.
If we have any questions, any Star Wars related questions or disco related questions,
Yeah.
Robbie Carlisle is here on camera. Everyone say hi to Robbie.
What's up, Robbie?
Hello, he's behind.
Always like in the fog.
Yeah.
He's in the fog.
My gosh.
Robbie,
This place is cool.
Anything
So who is your favorite BG?
Yeah. Anything pops up, Robbie, you let us know, all right?
I got to
there?
go with Maurice. I'm sorry.
right.
That's one of my favorites.
Now, you do a lot of voice work and a lot of accent work and things like this. Did a lot of that come from living in New York? Did you?
A lot of it came from just being a fan of movies.
Yeah.
And just having an ear for it. I'm a musician, and I grew up playing music, and that's what I wanted to. That was my first love. I went to college for music and stuff. So I always had an ear for voices, and I always had an ear for sound. And I really do have to credit my parents, because my parents were very open to pretty much everything. My father is a cinematographer, and he's a huge cinephile. So my father, when I was a kid, would watch all of these like Fellini movies and all of these, the hardcore like, French Nouveau, French New Wave kind of, movies and stuff. And I would always just be hearing these things in the house. He's a big Truffaut fan. He was a big Fellini fan, of course.
Sure.
He was a big Cassavetes fan. So, my father would be studying these movies, and they'd just be on. So I'd hear them,
Yeah.
and I'd just imitate them. Me
Yeah.
and
And then
my brother and my
you
sister.
told us last time we had you on, we talked about you went to the High School of the Arts with Lauryn Hill and some other people. That are
Yeah,
really talented?
it wasn't an arts high school. We went to a school in Jersey. I moved to Jersey for high school.
Was it
the
like
Bronx was
Sister
hot.
Act? Was it like Sister Act 2?
It wasn't. Lauren
Was
Lauren,
anyone's eye on the sparrow?
Yes.
At any point.
There were
Okay,
many eyes on many sparrows.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
But Lauren was just a phenom. She, as soon as she walked in the room, all eyes were on her. She had always had that thing. She's younger than me, so I was in high school, and then she came in, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's Lauren." And I was like, "Who is this Lauren Hill girl?"
Did you ever ask her out?
No, but she went to the prom with my brother.
Oh,
I just
good for
heard
your brother.
this from Jordan Hembrough, who's our next guest today. He's the toy hunter from Discovery Channel. He told me that, or he had heard that your father was a cameraman on a show on
Good Morning America.
On Good Morning America, yeah. Because when
years.
he was on Good Morning America, he said, "Oh yeah, I love Star Wars," and one of the guys was like, my son was, and I think he was talking to your dad.
Yeah. My father had been on Good Morning America for years. I mean, he just retired actually from Good Morning America last year, and now he's working there more than he did when he was not retired.
Oh my God, really?
How's that work?
Yeah, they just keep calling. My joke is he's the only one who knows where all the stuff is.
Yeah.
Sure,
because he's been
that
there
makes
for
sense.
40 years.
Yeah, of course.
And that show turns over so many times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I pretty much grew up on that set with like David Hartman and Joan London, and then Charlie Gibson and Diane Sawyer.
Wow,
very cool.
Yeah. My father is very much ensconced in the Good Morning America lore.
That's awesome.
God, I love it.
But yeah, he did Good Morning America. He did Wild Water Sports, and he did ABC Sports, and so I have a lot of Howard Cosell stories.
Really? Do you really?
What's your best Howard Cosell story? And can you do it with a Howard Cosell voice?
Wait, hang on.
Yeah.
Let me get Robbie over here for a second. Robbie, come here for a second. Come here. Let me get Robbie for 1 second.
All right.
Hang on. And then we're getting to Howard
Please
Cosell.
don't
Robbie?
rush.
This is Robbie, everybody. If you haven't, have you met Robbie already?
haven't, no.
This is Ahmed Best, and this is Robbie. Robbie is a big part of our show, and he brings the sex. He brings
He really
the-
does.
He
Yeah.
really does.
It's a great
That's what I
dude.
felt when he walked over here.
Robbie, what I'd like you to do is
Sex.
run. Would you run this for me for a little while? So go back over there, or go wander around, and get yourself a little something, and we'll make a. There's no food, but but I'll get you something.
We'll get you
Just-
some in a bit.
Just let those people see Ahmed and everyone as well. Would you mind? All right. I want to hear the Howard Cosell story.
Okay.
Here we go.
Let's hop into
Favorite
this.
Howard Cosell story.
That was right in his face.
That's not weird at all.
That's weird. That's
wanna
Robbie.
come
Now
over
you're
here,
making
Robbie?
it uncomfortable, Robbie.
Does it make me feel claustrophobic?
Son of a
In the
bitch, Robbie.
least.
Damn it, Robbie!
Unbelievable.
Leave Ahmed Best alone, Robbie.
Extreme close-up.
We love you, Robbie.
I love you, buddy. I'm just messing with you.
Classic filmmaking you got inside my head.
I know.
Literally, he was inside your head with the camera.
Right there.
Howard Cosell.
Howard
Yes.
Cosell. So my father is going to pick up his check at ABC. And me and my brother, I have a twin brother. Me and my brother were just standing outside waiting. He said, "Oh, run in, run out." My father was really big about the run in, the run out. Right?
Yeah.
Run in, run out. Right. Father runs in, goes pick up a check, and Howard Cosell walks out. And Howard Cosell was really tall.
Really?
Right? Yeah. Or maybe I was just really small, but I just remember Howard Cosell being like really, really tall, really giant. And he had, the curly toupee and everything. And then Howard Cosell comes out of the door, pulls out a cigar, looks at me and my brother, and he goes, "Who are you two?" And we were just like, And at the time, we were like, "Oh my God, that's Howard Cosell." He was famous back in the day. He was like, "Who do you two so-and-sos belong to?" And we were like, my dad is inside picking up his check. He's like, "Let me guess. Is your dad Adrian?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was wondering who would let a guy like that in this building.
Oh, my God.
And then me and my brother were like, "Oh, shit." Oh, like we're in trouble. And then my father walks out, and he goes, "Here's the culprit right now." And then he lights up a cigar, And my father's like, Howard, what are you doing to my kids? What are you telling them? And he's like, I was just trying to figure out who these two young men belong to. And he was like, stop bothering my kids, right? And then Howard Cosell starts laughing. He holds out his hand and he goes, I'm Howard Cosell. We shake his hand. He's like, you guys look great. You got the best father in the building. And we were like,
Oh, wow.
thanks, Howard Cosell. And then like a limo pulls up. He gets in. He's like, I'll see you soon. Adrian, I'll see you at work. And he drives away.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
That
That's
could be like
amazing.
some cigar company's version of the Mean Joe Green commercial for
Right.
Coke. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, right? Now,
Yeah.
you have a twin brother. What is your...
I do.
Where is he at these days?
He's still in New York. He's
Yeah.
in Harlem. You know, he works in advertising. He's a graphic designer. You know, my family has two types. We have the quiet, introverted visual designer and the very loud, extroverted performer.
Sure.
And every iteration of the best family has both of those if there are multiple children in the mix. You know,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
my cousins are either introverted or extroverted. So.
Now, are you guys identical twins?
No, we're fraternal. We're fraternal. But we look alike. We look like brothers.
So,
Does he ever get asked, like, hey, are you the guy
No.
who was Jar Jar Binks? Like, that never happens to him?
No.
Okay.
Thank God. He might throw somebody across the room or something. Doesn't- His temperament is a lot less forgiving than mine.
when now we talked about this on the show before that you were doing Stomp the musical.
Yes.
Oh, you were doing it on Broadway
Yeah.
at the time, and that is where you were picked and cast
In San Francisco.
That's
I was
where
doing
you
it in
got the
San
audition
Fran. Yeah.
for Star Wars.
I was on the road for that one. I was in San Francisco with that when Robin Gerland, who casted Menace and Clones, was in the audience just by chance. She was
Just
in the
by
audience.
chance.
Well, I mean, one of the cats, my friend RJ, invited her to the show in San Francisco, and I just didn't know she was there. And it was I don't know if I told this story the last
You
time.
talk about how, like, you had something had happened and you were like, I'm going to make this show all about me.
I was outlandish.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just ridiculous, the shit I did in that show. It was just
And, like, you felt bad about it.
I felt terrible because it was, I made the show. Stomp was really about these 8 people trying to communicate a language to the audience.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
So we're pretty much teaching you how to speak Stomp. And by the end of the show, we're communicating, without using any words. And it was very special to me because, growing up as a musician, and playing drums, drums was really all about communication. So, I really took a very personal approach to Stomp, and I felt like it was my goal at the end of the day to get everybody to understand what we were saying on stage, right? And I just let my ego take over in that show. I was just fucking taking my shirt off and throwing it in the audience. And it's
Oh
like,
my God!
I was just making. The thing about Stomp was I felt like Stomp was kind of tailor made for me, so I had this ability to like take over the show whenever I wanted to. Kind of like LeBron James on a basketball court. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like at any moment he can just be like, everybody sit down.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna win this game. And I felt that way on the Stomp stage. There were moments where I was just like, nobody's gonna look at anybody but me.
Wow.
And it was a powerful thing because when I felt like someone needed assistance on stage, I could just throw that assistance to them, and then just elevate the show, because the show really is an ensemble show. It's about those people on stage. So, when I decided to not do that and take over the stage, and be a punk 22-year-old, arrogant kid, I just made it all about me, and I felt really bad about that after I did it.
But if I was in the audience for that one, I would have been like out of control.
Yeah, it would have been. It
blown
would have been
away.
amazing.
Well, I mean, it got me the gig. It got me the Star Wars gig because, Robin was like, "Who is that guy?"
Yeah, when you just shine out, when you not to say that you outshined the rest of the cast, but when you do outshine an entire Broadway show, people take notice of that. I mean, look, not to sound rude in any way, but you look at Book of Mormon comes out, and Josh Gad stars in Book of Mormon. And there's a lot of other people who were in that show, and he blew everyone else off that stage. I mean, and got an entire career out of it. He got a series immediately. Like immediately, they just handed him a series.
It's the way I feel about being on this podcast. You know,
Yeah,
the way that you take it over.
I carry you guys on the podcast every now and then, and it just happens that way sometimes.
Literally, they're going to give Robbie a show. That's just how it's going to be.
gonna happen.
Robbie.
Robbie will be the hottest director in Hollywood. This podcast.
He just throws his hands up like, probably.
Probably. I don't know. Maybe. So, So you had an audition. Did it get you an audition, or did they give you the part?
It got me an audition.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you get to the audition, just walk us through that particular audition.
Okay.
Did you know what you were auditioning for?
No idea. Robin called me in my apartment in San Fran. She was like, "I want you to come up to the ranch to audition," and I was like, "That's all I really need. Like, I don't really care about actually getting the part. The fact that I get to audition at the ranch is fresh."
Yeah, I'd lose my mind.
So, I had to get a car. I rented a car and I drove up to Skywalker to audition. And it was in the main house. I don't know if you've been to Skywalker, but there's a huge Victorian mansion on Skywalker. And George's office is in the top. And Robin's office was in the basement. Right?
Sure, yeah.
And it was a very narrow, very small room. So she was like, come downstairs. And when you walk through the mansion, the first thing that you walk through is a display case. And in the display case, there's the Indiana Jones hat and the whip and a couple of the original lightsaber handles and some awards and shit. But, any Lucasfilm fan will walk through the doors and fucking freak out. And I freaked out. I was like, the Indy whip and the this and that. I was just bugging, right?
Yeah.
So there are two ways you can go about that situation. You can be like, "Oh, I'm so nervous, I can't do anything," or you can say, "I'm getting this goddamn job. I don't even know what the hell it is, but I'm doing it." I went that way.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know whatever the hell this is. I am going to do it.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
getting this thing. So we went down in the basement in Robin's office, and she was like, "Look, we're casting a new Star Wars movie. And George wants to try this thing, but I can't tell you what it is. I can't give you any lines, and I can't tell you what it looks like."
Oh, my God.
We're doing a thing.
So I was like, "Well, all right." And then she said, at first Jar Jar was supposed to be like a salamander. So she was like, "Can you do stuff like a lizard, close to the floor?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I did a bunch of that stuff. And then she was like, "All right, can you do some stuff standing up?" And I was like, "All right, cool." And then she was like, can you do anything else? And so I started doing backflips and a lot of capoeira moves because I did capoeira for years.
Oh, wow.
So I was doing a bunch of capoeira in this really tiny space. She shot this whole thing, right? And then she was like, "Okay, great. Do you want a tour?" And I was like, "Yes." And then she took me on a tour of the ranch and the building and everything. And I was like, you know what? If nothing happens out of this is cool. I had a great time, right? I go back doing Stomp on the road, right? Robin later tells me, she immediately runs the tape to George, and she's like, "I know you're looking at a bunch of people, but you got to see this guy," right? George takes a look at it. This is from Robin's story, and he goes, "All right, bring him in for a test." George is kind of like, "Yeah, whatever." So I'm in D.C., and I get a phone call. "Can you come back to San Francisco? We want to do a test with you at ILM." And I was like, "Gee, I get to see ILM too?" You know what I mean?
Oh, my God.
At first I saw the ranch. Now I get to see ILM too. So I'm freaking out. I'm like, hell yeah, I want to go to ILM. So I go to ILM. They fly me back out. And same deal. ILM at the time wasn't where it is now. It was not too far from the ranch, but it was just this kind of abandoned, strip mall-esque park. So all the facades looked like old restaurants, fast food joints. And you had no idea what was behind it. It was just these fast food joint buildings that didn't have any signs on it. But it was just I'm walking through a ghost town. All right. And then you go through a door and you see the Energizer Bunny and the original Han Solo and Carbonite and all of this shit that you see everywhere.
Yeah. Sure.
But this is where they make it.
Wow.
Shit. And I walked through where are we? What are we doing right now? And there were people doing forced perspective miniatures, but this whole CG thing was kind of brand new, and nobody really knew how it was working. They were writing the software, writing the code as George was like throwing out suggestions and thinking about it. So I'm freaking out, and then here it comes. You can either be nervous or you can get the job. And I was like, I'm getting this fucking job.
Fuck yes.
So I meet a whole bunch of the animators, right? And I meet Rob Coleman, who's the head animator. And Rob runs, he does all the Lego movies now in Australia. What's the Animal Logic is the company I think Rob runs. So Rob is there, and a bunch of other of the animators are there. And they go, okay, can go in that room and put that bodysuit on, and now everybody knows what the mocap bodysuit looks like.
Yeah.
Right. It looks like it has all the ping pong balls.
At the time, though, it was probably like, what the hell are you
At
making
the time,
here?
it was like a bodysuit, like a dancer's bodysuit with like a whole bunch of just like light, bright orbs on them, right? And then I had to put on this headband with orbs on it and these hand things with orbs on it. And then, Jar Jar was supposed to be like 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So they had these really high platform Converse All-Stars.
What?
So I walked out there.
Wait a second. Hang on a second.
Chuck Taylor's.
Yeah.
They had Chuck Taylor's.
And they had built a wooden platform. And they glued the Chuck Taylors to the wood.
If there's anybody out
Chuck
there
Taylor stills.
that can make an artist rendering of Jar Jar Binks wearing platform
Chuck
Converse heel, I would. I will
would
hang
love
that
to
on
see
my
that.
wall.
No, it was just super.
That's the
embarrassing.
coolest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I walked out of the room looking like I was about to go to the corner and make some cash.
Oh my gosh, we're back
love
at
it.
disco. What's going on?
Oh my god!
I'm walking around, right, and I'm like, oh man, this is like really embarrassing. Like I don't know what's about to happen. And they were like, well, we don't know either. We just want to. This is the test.
Yeah, you're waiting for him to come out and be like, you're on punked.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
We
got
got
punked.
you. And I was like, you didn't have to get me and do all of this shit. And then George walks out and he's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm just like, I didn't know you were going to be here. And that was the first time I met George
Oh my god!
during this test. And they were like, all right, we want you to go into the volume. And I was like, what's a volume? And they're like, oh, no, just the space, where the taped off space. And in the corners of the room, there were these cameras that capture infrared. So the light is reflected off of the balls that are on not my balls, but the balls that are on the suit, the bodysuit.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Infrared at the time captured that. This was before digital photography. So the infrared film captured that, translated that into digital information on the computer.
Like the wireframe thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you track the wireframe, and then you build over the wireframe.
Yeah.
So they were trying to figure out if this was going to work, and this test was like the if, right? So George was like, okay, you can just walk across the room. And I was like, walk across the room. And then he was like, can you do it like a little slower, like arms dragging, kind of bob your head a little bit. And I was like, okay, I did that. And he was like, okay, what else you can do? And then I started doing all the stuff I did in Robin's office, which was a lot.
With the platform Chuck Taylor's on. That's hard.
That was the challenge. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do a backflip with those things on. So I was like, all right, this might hurt. So I did it. And I mean, successfully I did it. But it was
Jeez.
definitely
Do you think
iffy
you
thing.
trying that stuff is what put you ahead of anybody else going up for the job?
Yeah, I mean the other people going up for it weren't movers, and George wanted somebody who was a mover first. Like the other guys, I had heard later that Robin Williams and Eddie Murphy and Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was the only other mover,
Yeah.
that was in the mix. But George didn't want those personalities and those names to take away from the movie. It's the exact opposite of what Disney's doing now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So George really hired me because I was a mover, and the voice shit came later. But he really wanted someone who would be open enough to experiment, because nobody knew what was going to happen. Like nobody knew what was going on.
Sure.
And it was a lot easier for, an unknown kid off the streets of New York to just be just to do whatever
Yeah.
fuck, just because I was happy to be
Because
there.
if you're
Right, of course.
Because if you're Eddie Murphy or Robin Williams, like you have
There's a
this career
brand,
that's locked
there's a
in. You do
thing.
certain
Yeah.
things,
They'd
and you
be
might
like,
sit there and be
"No."
like, I don't do that.
yeah, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you? I feel like there's a fluidity to Jar Jar. So were you drawing like what were you drawing on once you understood what this character like who you were becoming? Like were you drawing on certain techniques from different styles that you were into?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from my background as a martial artist. And, you know, I grew up doing martial arts all my life, and I've always been a fan of martial arts movies and techniques and stuff. So I grabbed a lot of it from martial arts. But, you know, George is a big Buster Keaton fan, and he really wanted Jar Jar to be like digitally animated Buster Keaton.
Sure.
You
That's
know,
awesome.
Okay.
so Phantom Menace is pretty much, if you watch Jar Jar's progression, it's pretty much a Buster Keaton movie.
I love it.
You know,
Wow.
and so George and I would like sit and watch Buster Keaton movies, and he'd be like, "All right, I want you to try that in this scene and take that and that and that." So the final battle scene in Menace is dead up Buster Keaton.
Wow.
Gosh, I can't wait to go back.
Now I got to watch it again.
Yeah.
And like, is there I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's already done this, but has there been like any sort of like annotated thing where they wrote down like, okay, so here Jar Jar's doing this thing
No,
for
but
Buster
they
Keaton,
should. It's really easy to find. You know,
Yeah.
where I'm hanging off the tank.
That's like him on the clock tower.
I'm on the clock tower.
Yeah.
Wow. What?
When I'm running away from the orbs, that's Buster Keaton running away from the barrels
Yeah.
running down the street.
My
so
God.
it's like pretty much dead up a Buster Keaton movie.
That's
now I got to
mind-blowing.
rewatch it.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the funnest thing I've heard in so
Yeah.
long.
Hey, so you know, I as always, you know, we always have Fireball whiskey with us whenever we tape an episode of our show. You know, we had the Kaplan twins on. We
Yeah.
gave them a bottle. We give bottles away a lot to people. You know, sometimes
It's good
when
stuff. People like it.
People love that stuff. I actually have a bottle with me right here, and I'm gonna drink some of it. But if you listen when I open the top of this bottle, you can hear in the bottle. You can hear the Fireball whiskey talking, and it's
You can't hear Fireball
yes,
talking.
Oh, you totally can. Hang on, let me
right.
take the lid off. Ready?
Ayoga, the man. I could be the man.
There
I'm
he
gonna
is.
be the man today.
That's the
We're
sound.
gonna have fun.
That's the sound of the Fireball
Yeah.
whiskey inside
it's
the
like
bottle.
It's like encouraging you.
It does. Hey there, Fireball whiskey.
Hey, man.
Hey, I'm so excited. I can't wait to drink you.
Man, stick it. Get rid of all this small talk. Just drink me already so I can have some fun in your
All
tummy,
right,
bro.
get in my tummy. Get in my tummy.
Well, make it happen. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Oh yeah. Oh. How is it down there?
Oh, my goodness, dude. It's so cool down here, but like, dude, what the hell did you eat for lunch?
Oh.
Oh, my God.
I
It
mean-
smells like dog shit down here, bro.
Oh my! Oh well, hopefully that Fireball whiskey will make things smell just a
Oh, my
little bit better in
God.
there.
I can't, I'm going to have to hang out in your stomach for a while and make it smell good. So,
Yeah, try.
keep drinking that shit, bro.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna drink a little bit more. Here we go.
Oh
A little
my God,
more.
we're friends. Yeah, we're having a party in Steven's stomach.
Drown out these
It's
horrible
awesome.
choices I've made.
Woo!
Oh, Fireball whiskey. You know, Fireball. It makes you feel good and it makes your stomach smell better. All right, back to the show. Now, when you didn't know that you were going to do the voice as well,
No.
right? When did you find out that you were going to do the voice?
Before I went to London, I auditioned for The Voice, and I auditioned over the phone, and it was Robin. Robin was like, "Give me like 6 different choices," and I did, and it was like they were all various, And
What
then
kind of-
George,
What are some of the
Any-
other ones you might have done?
I did a really low one.
What would Jar Jar sound like then?
I haven't. I don't know. Jar Jar is so in my DNA right now,
Yeah.
vocally, that I can't even remember what the other ones
Can't do
that
like,
I
hey girl,
tried.
it's Jar Jar.
Yeah, baby.
Sexy Jar Jar.
Lisa, go Bombay.
Yes.
Yo. Hey, Blibber.
God. It's the sexiest thing Jar Jar Binks has ever said.
I did a kind of an English one, I think, with a bit of an accent. But the one that was used was the one that George liked the most because he was really focusing on the kids. He's really focusing on children, and a lot of the language in the dialogue is really like how his son used to talk as a baby, you know. So he would just take all of his son's crazy baby words and just gave them to Jar Jar. That's where the language came from. You know. So, you know, it got interpreted as this like weird Jamaican-esque like accent.
Sure.
But, you know, that's how his kid talked. That's pretty much where the language comes from. And
He didn't adopt a Jamaican kid, right?
No. He's, you know,
Regular
run-of-the-mill, everyday white American kid. You know, maybe he got some Jamaican in his DNA. I don't know.
It's a possibility.
But I didn't put an accent on the language. That's just how it was written. And that's all from George. That's all from his brain. You know, he made that up.
Wow.
And I just tried to make it make sense in some kind of a way. There was a couple of scenes where I was just like, I have no clue what's going on. Like there's this one scene where me, Liam, and Ewan are in the submarine.
Yeah.
And we're going to the
the Gungam. City
what's a
down there,
bongo? It's like a ship, I hope. So we're in the bongo, and it's there's always a bigger fish scene.
Yeah, of
And
course, yeah.
There's a line in it where, you know, Obi-Wan is like, Jar Jar, why were you banished? You know, and I say something like, I did one or two little bitty things I can't remember. Like, you could say I was banished because I was clumsy, and he goes, you were clumsy, yeah. And then this line says, you might say I would have boomed the gasser, crashed in the boss's hay blibber, then banished, right? And I had no idea
What is that? Yeah.
what that was, what it was supposed to mean. Like I was like, what do I say? Right? So right before this, you know, and this is like all day, I'm like, oh shit, this line is gonna come. I don't know what to do, you know? So I go up to George right before we do it, and I'm just like, hey man, what does this mean? Boom the gasser, crashing the boss's hay blibber, then banished. And he goes like this. I don't know.
I love it.
Just amazing rhythm. I
I
have no
was
idea.
like, what?
Yeah.
You don't know. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So
you
we
want
get in the
to
chair.
check
and
the
just do it.
Periscope for Star Wars
Wow.
questions?
Yeah, any questions, buddy? Any questions you're getting?
Most of them have been about your dick. I'm not
Most of the questions are about whose dick?
Ahmed's dick or my dick?
No, your dick.
Steven's dick.
My
Steven's
dick.
You're a dick.
What? I had
Come here.
Get on mic, Robbie.
Just come over here.
Get on mic, Robbie. It's the internet, so that's to be expected.
No, the internet is dick
to
obsessed.
see your dick.
Yeah.
Oh, did you stop?
Why?
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable question. Why?
So what were some of the questions, Robbie?
How big is Gustavo's dick? How big is Gustavo's dick when he's erect? Will Gustavo show his bulge? Where is Logan? Where is Logan? Where is Logan? Where is Logan? Hey, where's Logan? It's like you kidnapped him.
Okay, so Steven,
And they know where-
Robbie, can you check the Periscope? Because that might be a little different.
Yeah, check the Periscope.
That might be a little more Star Wars centric. Because
Jesus
those are his Big
Christ.
Time Rush fans that are obsessed with this character, Gustavo.
That's where we
Rock.
met. That's
Yeah,
where
we
me and
met on
Ahmed
Big Time
met.
Rush.
On
That's right.
Big Time Rush.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
So do you know where Logan is then?
Yeah,
Ahmed?
where is
No
Logan?
idea. I don't
Do you
know
know?
where Logan is. No.
Finally going to see that bulge, though.
Oh wow, we're at 8,000 viewers
Nice.
Uh, Huge.
Well done.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, 8,000
Thank you,
people.
8,000
So
people.
okay, Robbie, check the iPad. What does it say on there?
While we're looking at that, do you want to?
Sorry.
Can you tell me about your podcast real quick while we're getting
The
some questions?
Afrofuturist
let's hear
podcast.
about
Yeah. Well, I've always been, of course, a sci-fi geek, and you know, A New Hope was the first movie I ever saw ever in my life. And you know, much like a lot of people who saw it, it really made me fall in love with the movies. And you know, even though Star Wars is not science fiction, I was a big Star Trek fan, which is a science fiction fan, and Star Wars fan, which is more like speculative fiction, because Star Wars takes place a long time ago.
Right.
you know,
Sure.
In a galaxy far, far away, and there's not very much like real science in it. So it's more about speculation, what would happen in this guy. So I always wanted to talk about both of those things, science fiction and speculative fiction, as well as, you know, I'm a big, you know, just geek when it comes to tech and science and stuff. And, you know, growing up in New York City, I would be at like the Museum of Natural History and the Hayden Planetarium like every weekend.
Ooh.
You know, I'm just running around that place. That was my escape. That was my home, and it really made me fall in love with science. And I've always been in love with science growing up. So I have a lot of people in my life who are scientists and who are artists that either love science fiction and speculative fiction or write science fiction or speculative. And I just wanted to talk to them.
Awesome.
I also wanted to talk about the future. Like, nobody really talks about the future. The future is kind of taboo, you know, because everybody, the big self-help thing is live in the now, live in the moment, live in the present, you know, and that's cool. But because we are a mammal that can perceive the past and the future, living in the present doesn't negate the fact that we can have an idea or a forecast of what might be
Absolutely.
to come. So I wanted to start talking about that. And a lot of the times when you talk to futurists or when you talk to people about the future, they're not really thinking about people who have black skin and brown skin. For some reason, like, we're just gonna come along, you know, to whatever the future is and what's going to be.
What a small-minded
Yeah,
type
it's
of choice.
really, it's true. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about it, you know, even if you take what's going on right now in politics with the healthcare bill, and you know how the Republican Party are calling it a compassionate bill, they're not really thinking about the people that they're going to leave behind. Because of a massive tax cut and taking people and a huge cut of Medicare. So they're not thinking about the millions of people who are going to be negatively affected by it, because the majority of those people are going to be black and brown people. Right? So their future forecasting doesn't include anybody that doesn't look like them. And even worse, it doesn't include anybody in their socioeconomic sphere. Right? So it's that way all the way down the line. And, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I'm just a huge, huge fan of, from the Bronx, always thinks in ways that are not only all-inclusive, but thinks in ideas that encompass a future forecast that everyone can achieve. You know, he was asked this question once, like, would it be easier to fly all of our garbage into space? And he was like, think about the question. It takes billions of dollars to launch a rocket into space, and you want to take our most worthless things and spend billions of dollars to shoot them into space. Why would you do that? He was like, why not think of a world without garbage? Like, what would it be without trash? What if we didn't waste? Right?
Wow.
So that hits everybody.
Right.
You know?
It's weird how simple that is, but for me, that isn't where my mind would go. My mind would go, let's fix it by getting rid of it, not let's fix it by changing.
Exactly. So I wanted to talk about that in the Afrofuturist podcast. Like, how do we perceive the future? How is the future perceived by the people creating it? And then how can we democratize the future where it is all-encompassing, where everybody can talk about it and participate in it? You know, you have these enormous populations of people in India who are doing customer support for everything. You know, so here are a bunch of brown people who are so computer literate that they can help you fix your computer from half a world away. Yet they don't even make what we consider minimum wage. So what's going to become of these people? What's going to become of people who are basic coders? You know, what's going to happen is basic coding is going to be the next, like, blue collar job. You know, you're going to herd all of these low income people into just coding. So rather than it being like working on an assembly line and putting screws in cars, it's going to be working on an assembly line, writing lines of code. So thinking about the future in that respect, like, how do we take coding and not make it a socioeconomic ghetto, for lack of a better term, and turn it into something that could benefit the world in a creative process, is a question we have to ask, and we're not asking those questions. As well as, like, speculative fiction works in a way that, you know, I was always big into Marvel Comics because most of Marvel Comics took place in New York City. You know, Spider-Man was from Queens. You know, the X-Men were from upstate. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of stuff happened on the streets that I grew up with. So it was easier for me to imagine Spider-Man flying down Midtown Manhattan because I was about to go to Midtown Manhattan. And I think speculative fiction works in a way and in consort with the future because all you got to do is tweak reality just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you have this fantastic world that you can just get lost in. Man. So
Love that.
The future Afrofuturist is going to be talking about those things, you know. So right now I'm batching a bunch of episodes. We have I'll be talking to people in AI. I'm talking to futurists who are forecasting 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now. There's a foundation called the Long Now Foundation, which they're really into looking at what 10,000 years from now is going to be, and be talking about that. There's this institute called the Institute for the Future. I'm going to be talking to them about how they forecast in different parts of the world and what they do and stuff. So I really want this idea about speculative fiction and futurist thinking to be a viable source as not only a conversation piece, but if somebody wants a job as a futurist, that exists. You know what I mean?
Now, I have a question. In how many years in the future will Robbie find a nice man that he can settle down with?
I really have to know a little bit more about Robbie to know.
He
But
Do we need to ask the 10,000 year guy?
into what are you mostly into, Robbie, these days? Black guys.
Robbie loves black men.
His face went, oh, fuck.
His dream man is Terry Crews. Is what he
Terry
said.
Crews.
Terry
Well,
Crews.
that might be hard because he's married.
Yeah.
But it depends on.
I think Terry Crews and I could give it a shot.
Nah, you never know, man. I think he's open. You seen his Old Spice commercial?
Yeah, possibly.
He'll do whatever.
He's doing it.
It depends on where you hang out, bro. You got to go find where the brothers are.
He's got to try his best. That's all we
So,
can do.
okay.
We
A
have
couple
to.
Star Wars questions for you real quick.
Yeah.
Besides Jar Jar Binks,
Yes,
who is your favorite Star Wars character?
Han Solo.
Okay, and besides the major characters, who's your favorite minor Star Wars character?
Bail Organa.
Bail Organa. Why Bail Organa?
Man, the dude took Princess Leia. He was
pretty
like,
badass.
I'll take care of her. I'll take care of her. And, you know, he ran a planet. That shit is hard.
Yeah.
You know?
I can't wait to
Difficult.
hear your podcast from Mars. I think
Word.
that's going to be pretty dope.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I love that. Before we wrap up, we've got two things. Number one, we are at the
Scum and Villainy
Cantina. And at the Scum and Villainy Cantina, they have amazing, wonderful drinks. They have blue milk.
Word.
They have all sorts of terrific drinks here.
Blue
But
milk
my
lactose-free?
favorite drink is a drink called Fireball Whiskey.
The cinnamon
And,
whiskey?
and I brought it for you. This is a bottle for you, buddy.
Get
This
outta
is
here.
this is your bottle.
Holy cow. Thank you.
So thank you, and thank you for coming.
I'm going to finish this before I get on my bike.
Yeah, please be careful. Be careful. You
Wait till
rode
you
up
get
on a
home.
motorcycle, and it was so badass.
Yeah,
What
that's
a
cool.
badass fucking motorcycle, too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Will you tell, before we wrap up, will you tell us I know that we've talked about it in the past, but would you tell at least tell Mike Glazer the story about you and Michael Jackson?
Oh,
that
yeah.
Michael Jackson
Oh,
story.
man.
And also,
That's
one
a
other
bit-
quick thing.
so much.
We're not going to get into it
famous
today,
one.
but if you want to hear Ahmed's thoughts on the theory that Jar Jar Binks was secretly a Sith Lord, go listen to our last podcast with Ahmed Best
Yeah.
from January.
Yes. Is that January?
And
Yeah.
you can hear Ahmed talk all about what he thinks about that theory and why we're actually sitting in the presence of a Sith Lord right
What's
now.
so crazy is after you told that theory, and really after you really got into it, I went home and started looking at like pictures online, and my God, there's a lot of artwork of Jar Jar as a
Yeah.
Sith Lord,
Yeah.
and
There
it
are a
is
lot.
so badass. He
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Pretty
so
cool.
terrifying.
Yeah,
love it.
I really like that theory.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool.
I'm a-
I thought it
I'm
was
a fan,
really
so-
smart.
I'll go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so no,
What happened
please,
with
Michael Jackson.
MJ? my
Michael
man?
Jackson. So I'll try to make it as brief as possible. So
Sure.
me and Natalie Portman and George and George's kids, we went to see Michael Jackson at Wembley. He invited us because he was in London while we were shooting. So we were in the Prince's box at the Royal Box at Wembley.
My God.
So
Wait, and this was when you were in London shooting
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace, the first one, right?
So we're shooting Phantom Menace. We're in the Royal Box in Wembley, and the Royal Box has a secret passageway behind it, just so so the royals can either get the fuck out if there's something happening, or they're royals. They got to have secret passageways and shit. That's what they do.
Goes with the title.
So this dude comes out of nowhere from the secret passageway and whispers in George's ear and turns around and walks through this door. And George goes, "All right, guys, come on, follow me." So we follow him, and we're walking through the back of Wembley Arena, and there's this really small, narrow staircase. And then we come up backstage. And I was like, "Oh, shit, how do we get here?" We come up backstage, and backstage, they were like, it was full on, like, triage. Michael Jackson fans were like passed out and dehydrated, and they were all in these gurneys, and people were like rehydrating them, and they were all just like Britishly faint, just Michael,
So great.
Is there anybody that happens with now? No, he was the last one, right?
He was a thing of his own.
Yeah.
So we go. The creepy guy goes, "Come on, follow me." So we go even further deep into backstage, and then we're behind the stage, just watching the band. And Catherine, Michael's mom, is like with a bunch of random kids, just like herding them to a space. And there was this little like dressing room area where the guy points to, and he tells us, "Go back there." So we go back there, and there's Michael putting on a shirt. Right? And he doesn't speak. He just like smiles and sees us, and he reaches out his hand. I shake his hand. And the funny thing is, I remember looking at his hand and seeing like a little patch of brown skin like right on his finger. Because I was like, man, that's got to be some black left on Michael Jackson, right? And it was just like this little patch, this really small patch of brown skin. I was like, that's the shit. The vitiligo shit is real, right? So he like waves at us, and then the handler comes out and tells us to stand by stage, right? And then Michael Jackson runs back on stage, right? Like runs, and as soon as he gets on stage, like 80,000 people just
Crazy.
up on their feet, just bananas. Right. And I just remember watching Michael Jackson control 80,000 people and thinking, this shit is, he's insane. It's just amazing.
And that was for his encore.
Yeah. And he, he's not a big dude. He was like 5'10", kind of slight. So I was like, man, this isn't great. He's got everybody in the palm of his hand. So he does Heal the World, and like heal the world, make it a better place and shit. And then there's like this big globe drops down. It's like this huge world. And then like a whole bunch of kids join Michael on stage, right? And he's singing Heal the World. And everybody in the audience like Heal the World. And I'm singing Heal the World. And me and Natalie are looking at each other like, can you believe this? This is bananas, right? And then there's this weird like roadie dude like standing next to us. And he's like jamming to the music. He totally looks like a Metallica fan, but he's just like jamming to Michael Jackson music. And then he turns to us and he goes, you guys might want to stand back, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And then he takes this charger and runs it across the board, and fireworks, boom, just blast from everywhere. And it gets hot, and then it's like sparks are flying and shit. We're like, oh my God, right? And then Michael Jackson like disappears into the stage on an elevator. And we were like, wow, that was great. I'm thinking it's Miller time, like we go have a drink, right? The handler pops out of nowhere like a ninja again. He's like, hey, Michael wants to see you guys. So he takes us outside, and we go down the driveway, right? And there's this fleet of Toyota minivans with a bunch of kids in them, right? Michael pops out wearing the captain's jacket and the fedora and the mask and shit, right? Lisa Marie is in the truck, and they had just been divorced, and Lisa Marie is in the truck with a bunch of kids. She's like smiling at me and shit. And I tell this story all the time. Like, Lisa Marie gives me the eye, and I don't do shit about it. And I'm still upset about that. Yeah. I'm really, really upset.
Maybe she's listening.
I would have been like, hey, y'all, what y'all doing with these children? My brother from the Bronx can hang out, you know?
Drop them off.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, drop them kids off, come back to my room, Lisa. It'd be a hunk of burning love. So,
love it.
Michael comes out, and he goes, hey, guys, thank you for coming to my show. And George was like, oh, let me introduce you. This is Natalie. And he goes, Natalie, it's a pleasure to meet you. And he's like, you remember my kids, right? And he goes, yeah, Amanda, Katie. It's like, yeah, I remember you guys when you were little. I played with you guys when you were little. And he goes, this is Jar Jar Binks, also known as Ahmed. And he goes like this. Oh. I'm like, okay. All the air just got sucked out of the minivans. Like, I don't know what's happening right now. He goes, okay. And George was like, all right, cool. So if you want to, I'll be, you know where I'm at. And if you want to talk, and Michael's like, oh, yeah, we'll hook up, catch up, blah, 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 blah. Gets in the minivan, and then the fleet of minivans drive away. So I'm like, all right, bet, let's go to the after party. Go to the after party, of which Michael's not there because he's with Lisa Marie kids and minivans. And I'm sitting having a drink with George. And I'm like, hey, man, that was weird.
Yeah.
Like, what was that all about? Like, why introduce me as Jar Jar? And he's like, well, Michael wanted to play Jar Jar. And I was like, huh? Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, but he wanted to do it like Thriller. Like, he wanted to do prosthetics and, you know, he wanted to, like, just really get in all these costumes. And he's like, I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to do this CGI thing. You know, I really wanted to try the CGI thing. And I was like, so you're trying to tell me that instead of choosing Michael Jackson, you chose me? He was like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And I didn't even ask why. I was just dumbfounded by it.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, that's crazy. So the next day I go to work, and Natalie had already told everybody the story.
Yeah.
Amazing. God.
So I just remember I think we were all in Ewan's dressing room or Liam's. We were in one of their dressing rooms, which were always nicer than mine. And we were all just talking about it. Like, can you imagine what it would have been like if Michael Jackson would have been doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was like, well, it was like mixed. Oh, it would have been terrible. Like, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. It would have been able to work. Like, everybody would just be about Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, there would be no way he would be able to do the things you're doing just because it's Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Every single corner of that place would be Michael Jackson protected.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? So it would have just completely hurt the
Agreed.
filming of the movie.
Absolutely. Every scene would have to have fireworks, and you'd have to drop through the floor.
It's like, can you imagine? And plus, we all got really tight doing it because we never. And I think this is the biggest difference between the Star Warses, you know, and the thing that our cast had me, Natalie, Liam, and Ewan and Jake. The thing our cast had that the original cast had was George, you know, but we never thought we were in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We were never conscious of this is Star Wars. I mean, of course, we all knew and we were all excited.
Sure.
But it didn't cloud our performances. We weren't self-aware of it being Star Wars because we were all kind of figuring it out, including George. Like, George hadn't directed anything in 20 years.
Sure.
You know, so he was just coming back. He was just getting in the director's seat again. So there were no expectations. And for him, there were no expectations. I'm sure there were expectations from everyone else.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but we approached it as an independent film. I know that's weird to think about because it was so huge. The scale was just large. But for us, it was more about it being an independent film. And we just, you know, we were there to make the mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And George has always been a person who was all right with failure, you know. Mm-hmm. The only reason why I was even hired for the movie was because he's comfortable with failing big, you know, and really taking that chance. Yeah. And regardless of what you feel about Jar Jar, the fact that he did it changed movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's happening now with the Star Wars is there's a little bit of that missing because everyone who is doing it is such a huge fan.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a little different. You know, it feels different than those films.
So,
even.
In honor of our next guest, Jordan Hembrow, the toy hunter, who we're going to have on, do you have any cool Star Wars memorabilia?
I do. One of my favorite things, and this sounds so narcissistic, but, you know, Anthony Daniels forced me to be in that bar scene in Attack of the Clones, and we both had these like pilot's uniforms on, and it was one of those things where I was just like, yeah, sure. It was my day off, and Anthony was like, "You're gonna be in the movie." And I was like, well,
As Ahmed Best,
as
not
me,
in
not as Jar Jar.
CGI.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, man, I want to go to Bondi and swim with you in Australia. And he was like, nope, come on, we're getting dressed. And Anthony, you know, if for those who don't know who Anthony Daniels is, he plays C-3PO.
C-3PO, yeah,
he has like such a huge like personality, and he was like, nope, you're doing it. As soon as he said, I was like, I guess I'm doing this thing. So we went to wardrobe, and he was like, we're both going to be pilots, right? And we're going to be pilots on the same shit. He had a whole story. You know what I mean? And I was like, bet, I'm with it. And so I want a scar on my face, like right over my eye, like a blaster scar. Right?
Yeah.
And at first I was going to do like this huge mohawk, but then it looked like I had like a bikini wax on my head. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that shit. So he was like, we're going to be in this scene. And I was like, all right, cool. And we got, all the characters got body scanned for toys. And I just wanted to get body scanned because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Right? So we got body scanned. And then we did the scene, and it was fun, and I was just hanging out all day, and like George gave me a close-up, which was fun. And then they made a toy out of me and Anthony's characters.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's so
Believe it.
great.
So cool.
Oh, that's
And I was
so
like,
amazing.
holy shit. Like, I was not expecting that.
The
at
reason
all.
that's cool, and I'll tell you something, we went to Walter Koenig's house, who played Chekhov on Star Trek, and we got to interview him there at his house, at his office. And in his office, he's a big memorabilia collector, and he has a shelf of Chekhovs at his house, which is the coolest thing because he's got like 20 different Chekhov action figures.
Right on.
Yeah.
Amazing.
This is Jordan Hembrough,
The toy hunter.
The toy hunter.
Hello, Jordan.
What's up, guys?
He'll be on our next episode.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to see
Yeah.
you.
Are you familiar with this toy that Ahmed is talking about?
I am familiar with this toy. It's actually pretty cool too. I've got it in my personal collection. I've got a little Ahmed at my house.
Yeah. I was really shocked by that.
Yeah.
And surprised.
I love it. Well, honestly, it was.
Wait, before you go, I
Please.
asked him, did Steven tell you about my 6 degrees of Ahmed Best?
No.
All right, so here's the thing.
Oh no, we did. We talked about.
Oh, about my father?
Your
About your GMA.
your
Yeah.
dad's friggin' awesome, man. He's so funny. Like, so you told him.
I told him.
told-
All right,
you
so
met
you
him
know
on
it.
set.
So
Yeah,
you just stole my thunder.
I'm
Your
sorry.
dad's awesome. Be like, that's my son. I'm like, all right.
That's so
I said, all right,
great.
I'll tell him I said hi. Let's see
Thank
him.
you. Yeah.
All right. Well, Ahmed, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, where I'm cracking jokes and shit, at Ahmed Best. You can find me on Instagram at Best Ahmed. I don't check Facebook very much, but please check out the Afrofuturist podcast, which will be up in a couple weeks in June. It should be dropping in June. And AhmedBest.com, and the website for the Afrofuturist podcast will be found at the Afrofuturistpodcast.com.
All right. And Glazer, you can always get Glazer on Twitter and Instagram, I believe, both, or Glazer Boo Hoo Hoo. Is that right? And you can get Matt Walker
You can find me at funnymatt.com, or if you want to tell me you don't like what I did today, please let me know at mattwalkersucks.com.
Absolutely. You can always get me at Stephen Glickman, STEPHEN Glickman on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to the Nighttime Show podcast and leave us lots of messages and things. And we have to get started because Jordan Hembrow's here. We got to talk about toys.
We will.
Episode 1 is out. Episode 2 begins shortly.